welcome to the Early Edge College Football Pick Show brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. I am your host, Eric Cohen, and are you as excited for week number 3 as I am? Only a pair of ranked versus ranked matchups this week, but a fun slate nonetheless. And as always, it is time to bring in the stars of the show. His team's going against mine this week, and don't worry, we will talk about it. He is expert handicapper M-squared Mike McClure. The next guy is absolutely on fire. He's 2 for 2 on the show with his upset picks, the czar of the playbook, Emory Hunt. And finally, live from ACC country, CBS college football expert, Chip Patterson. All right, gentlemen, let us start off right away with storylines. Notre Dame, a 29.5-point favorite last week against Northern Illinois. Emory gave out Northern Illinois as one of his picks. They won the game outright. So the first storyline, are you out on Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman and or Riley Leonard? Mike, we'll start with you.
I am out on him here, EC. I'm really out on Freeman here in this particular spot. You know, Notre Dame, when you look at the Brian Kelly era, in the final 5 seasons, this team went 54-9. 2 games into season number 3 under Freeman, they are 20-9. And this concern that I have is Freeman was never a head coach. He never had a head coaching role at any point in his career prior to being promoted. And we've seen a lot of this in all levels of football. I think he's a fantastic football coach overall. I think he needs to focus more on the defensive side of the ball where he has come from. But the fact is they have 4 losses to unranked teams, with 3 of those being at home. I have some major concerns. 9 losses in just over 2 seasons. Essentially not going to get it done. So yeah, I'm out on this team the rest of the way. I'm out on Freeman being the head coach here for much longer in Notre Dame.
I'm mostly out on the quarterback position, and this is an important reason why you have to nail the quarterback position in college football, because it gives you a chance. When you look at Riley Leonard, it reminds me a lot of what we saw with Calvin Klein at Kansas State or Jordan Lynch at Northern Illinois. And so he's a great runner, great in terms of controlling the game based off his running ability. But when he's pressed into a situation where he has to make throws consistently, that's where he struggled. That's where he struggled at Duke. And we saw him subsequently struggle at against Northern Illinois. So for me, until they are able to get more comfort and more confidence with their quarterback and in his passing ability, I'm out on him and also Notre Dame.
All right, I'm going to go micro, then I'm going to go macro. Let's go micro. Let's go what's right in front of our face. We're looking at Notre Dame, a bunch of games where they're going to be expected to win starting this Saturday on CBS at 3:30 against Purdue. So there is multiple reports, that he has injured his non-throwing shoulder. And one of the best things that Riley Leonard does as a quarterback is his ability to run. He is not somebody who's been able to dice up any defense, whether it's at Duke or Notre Dame, in terms of being a drop-back passer. And so I'm wondering about Riley Leonard and his ability to still be a dynamic runner if he's dealing with a nagging shoulder injury, something which, yeah, might be a pain tolerance issue, but also might be something that shows up anytime he takes a hit. So I am out on Riley Leonard, especially from the wagering perspective. Now let's go macro. So Marcus Freeman said at his press conference, we've been here before. And you know what, gentlemen? That's the problem. We have been here before with Marcus Freeman, losing games that you should not lose, losing at home to unranked opponents. Mike mentioned the 9 losses that he already has on his resume. How about only having 10 men on the field for the final play against Ohio State last year? There have been too many times where Notre Dame, either in terms of the preparation with the game planning or the preparation in terms of what happens up here, they just have not been ready to be 100%. And I do think that falls at the feet of the head coach. So yeah, I'm out on Riley Leonard in the short term. I've got a bunch of red flags about his health. And in terms of the Marcus Freeman era long term, I'm out on that as well.
All right, guys, let's just hold for a second. You realize that after this week at Purdue, they have one more road game left, true road game left the entire season. They have 3 neutral site games, which will probably be like Notre Dame home games. When a home game against Louisville on September 28th is your toughest game until USC in the last game of the year, let's calm down. They can still get in the playoff at 10-2.
They can't beat Georgia Tech.
Favorable.
Nah, this team cannot beat Georgia Tech. If this team plays like it played against Northern Illinois, Georgia Tech will win that game in the big body bends.
No, wait a second, Chip. This is the same Georgia Tech team that just lost to Syracuse the other day? Is that what we're talking about?
Syracuse is good. Syracuse is good. Be ready to talk to your friends about Syracuse
guys,
being good.
I don't want to jump in right quick, but I'll just jump in right quick with one word that y'all keep jumping over. Army. Now go ahead, proceed.
See?
Okay.
Yes, same thing.
Notre Dame's going 10-2. They're making the college football playoff. All right, moving on. Which team is your biggest Power 4 conference early season surprise? Mike, you and Chip have an agreement, but we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's USC. Look, I was impressed with what they were able to do in that game against LSU. Impressed last week. Anytime you shut anybody out in college football, that is a big, big deal, but especially when it's this USC team. And now they've got another big opportunity coming up against Michigan in a road environment, but one I think they're going to find some success in. I actually like them to win that game outright, so I like USC here. I think the quarterback play has been phenomenal, and I think it'll only continue to get better, but it's really the defensive side of the ball. I think this early season success, again, let's assume that they're able to have some success on the road at Michigan. That confidence for this team on both sides of the ball is going to make them a very, very dangerous team going forward. So I love what I've seen from USC. Admittedly, was not super high on them before the season. I've changed my tune very, very quickly because I think there's been a lot of changes in a positive direction for that program.
Yeah, Mike, the win total was around 7.5 for this USC team. No one looked at them as really even a top 5 team in the Big Ten. And through 2 weeks, I think you've got to start talking about USC as a Big Ten title contender and certainly jumping ahead of the likes of Michigan from a power rating or power rankings perspective. The D'Anton Lynn effect is real. There are players that they've been able to take out of the portal that have been real difference makers. And so I think that, you see it with the fundamentals, you see it with the open field tackling, and you see it with the ability to really lock down teams on both ends of the spectrum. Like Garrett Nussmeier is going to be a quarterback who's playing on Sundays, and you were able to limit a little bit of what he was able to do in the opener. And like Mike said, you hold anybody to 0 points, even in a blowout game. That's impressive.
USC doesn't surprise me because I had them as a Big Ten sleeper coming into the season. What surprised me is what I didn't expect, and that's Boston College. When you look at Boston College, you watch a team, and you see teams like this every season. They go from hoping to win to thinking they can win to now expecting to win. And we're seeing Boston College now turning the corner from thinking to expecting, and they have a big game this weekend. I like how they're built. They play well situationally. They don't beat themselves. They can run the ball, and they have a dynamic player at quarterback in Thomas Castellanos that makes it an 11-on-11 game. So I like what I'm seeing from BC.
Boy, I hate to do this, but how about Nebraska? Are the Black Shirts back? They generated 6 sacks and two turnovers against Colorado, and Dylan Raiola, as a true freshman, has played mistake-free, efficient football. But don't look now, guys. The schedule's kind. Northern Iowa, Illinois, at Purdue, Rutgers, at Indiana. Could they be 7-0 heading into the Horseshoe on October 26th? I'm just saying, this Nebraska team might be for real. It's time we get on board. All right. Make sure to sign up with promo code WINNERS on sportsline.com. Go to the join page, use promo code WINNERS, get 60% off an annual plan that's better than any code that we have on the site. Check it out. Promo code WINNERS saves you 60% off an annual plan. You can check out articles from M Squared, Emory. I have some. Chip, check them all out, plus a bunch of expert picks, NFL and college, and every sport out there on sportsline.com. Coming up next, the Arizona Wildcats on the longest active winning streak in the country. Warms my heart. Will it continue past Friday night in Manhattan, Kansas? We'll make our top selections here on the Early Edge College Football Pick Show. Welcome back to the Early Edge, and how about my alma mater, the Arizona Wildcats? They haven't looked great this season in 2 tune-up games, but can they extend their current 9-game winning streak? It is time for picks. I have waited all the first 3 weeks just to get to this segment. All right, Chip, we're going to start with you. You're not making a pick on the side, on this game. You're playing a total. Let us know what it is.
All right, we are going to be going over the total, and this thing has been moving all week, so you want to be sure to go ahead and grab it. Who knows where it's going to end up? But the way that I break this thing down is, first, let's look at each one of these teams' game against FBS opponents. They have both gone over the total. Obviously, as you know, EC, the Arizona-New Mexico 100 points flying well over the total, but you've even got about a 2-touchdown difference in hitting the over with Kansas State Tulane as well. Now, let's go back to that game in Ullman Stadium last week, because Darian Mensah was able to find all kinds of explosive plays, run around, extend it with his legs, find somebody down the field. And what we have for Kansas State's defense is a massive upgrade in terms of both quarterback going to Noah Fafita and wide receiver with Teteroa McMillan and the rest of that group. So if that Kansas State defense was having trouble with allowing explosive plays against Tulane, well, I think Arizona is going to be able to do a lot more of the same. I am not panicky about how the offense struggled against Northern Arizona. Definitely seemed like they were holding some guys out in preparation with a short week on the other side. And then for Kansas State, I think this is when it's time to empty the bag. We have not seen a lot of Avery Johnson designed runs. We have not seen him use his legs, and we saw him roll out once against Tulane. And this is when it's time to put all the spring game playbook to the side. Let Avery Johnson cook. Even if he doesn't, DJ Giddens, a couple 100-yard games and a little bit of Dylan Edwards. I just see both of these teams being able to rip off explosive plays, a lot of touchdowns. We get into a 30s in the thriller, so give me over the total.
All right, M squared. We know you're a Kansas State guy. Should I even ask which way you're leaning here?
I don't think you need to ask. No. I'm going to be on Kansas State here, -7. I think the number's a little soft. I get it, right? Kansas State's defense has looked suspect to start, and it's really been uncharacteristic of Kansas State teams. Usually where they are good is in the trenches. They really haven't been good, and that's shown by letting some of those I would say lower caliber offenses run all over them and throw all over them. However, that quarterback for Tulane, I do think is going to be a very good quarterback, someone not to sleep on. But for me, it's Bill Snyder Family Stadium. It's Friday night, prime time. That's where the home field advantage exists. I like you, Chip. I agree. I think we see Avery Johnson with a few more designed runs and just more willingness to get out and run and make plays. And I think the running backs here are going to be the story, though. I really think that Edwards and Giddens are going to have their way against this Arizona team. I think that this is going to be a shootout back and forth. I'm very worried about McMillan in terms of containing him, but I know that's going to be the focus, at least early, make someone else beat you. And personally, I just think it's a home field advantage play here with the more, no offense, more talented quarterback with Avery Johnson, who is going to get loose in this game. I like Kansas State by a touchdown.
More talented quarterback. All right, Mike, I'm not even going to fight this. Emory, you're on my side, right? We're bearing down on this game, correct?
Yeah, when you look at Arizona, they are like the basketball team that scores a lot of points that can't really play defense. So they have a scorer's chance in this ball game. And I love that Mike and Chip brought up the running backs, because don't forget about what Arizona has on the other side. That speedy Merritt kid from New Mexico. So I expect a lot of speed on the field, and this is going to be a back and forth game. It'll look a lot like what we saw last week with Kansas State and Tulane. So we'll see them go back and forth. Defense will be optional. Therefore, I do like Arizona, who has an NFL player at receiver and an outstanding quarterback, and they also have speed to match those tailbacks over at Kansas State. I like them to keep this one under a touchdown.
That's a great pick, Emory. I'm picking Arizona +7. Yeah, I'm biased, but of course, I believe Arizona ran a scaled-down playbook last week. It was not a fun game to be at in Tucson, but they didn't want to give anything away here. They were down at least 4 starters, and the offensive line was down at least 2. It was an absolute disaster. Remember last year, as an underdog, the Wildcats were 6-0 against the spread. I don't know if they win the game. I'm going to say Kansas State wins a close one. Let's say something like 31-28, then the over hits. But the Wildcats are covering this line. I don't need 7.5 points. I'll take the 7.
You're right. The Wildcats are covering this line. It would be the Kansas State Wildcats covering the line here, EC. Are you in for a showdown, a little SportsLine early edge tradition? I'm in at 7 if you're in.
I am in at 7. Mike, we would normally say hit the music, but hey, we can't, we're on the air, we're on cable here. Nonetheless, I am in. I'll take the 7 points. Arizona is keeping it close. Love the preview from all you guys, minus Mike's pick there. All right, how about Alabama is a 15.5-point favorite at Wisconsin? The total is 51.5. The three of you look to be aligned. So, Mike, we're going to start with you. Alabama or Wisconsin? Big spread here.
Bama. I mean, the team, they're a much better team. I think Wisconsin's still got a quarterback problem, especially against a defense of this caliber. All you're probably going to hear throughout the week is the potential look ahead spot. The problem is there's a bye week sandwich between there. And certainly it's a look ahead spot at all times for Alabama when you know Georgia's on the schedule. They're always in the background preparing for moments like that. But here the defense wins out, in my opinion. Again, I think Wisconsin, major quarterback problem. I know it's a home game. I know it's got travel for Bama. It's an early 11 a.m. kickoff. Doesn't matter to me. This line should be 17.5. Love it here at 15.5.
Definitely lay these points to Alabama comfortably, because when you factor in the last time they played was 1928. We only had 48 states back then. So, we even have Hawaii and Alaska in 1928. Lay these points with Bama. This is a Jalen Milroe Heisman moment game. He's going to run up and down Camp Randall Field. It's going to look ugly, and they'll get out of Dodge early going into their bye week.
All right, so there's a blueprint to beat Alabama. There is a way that you can find, the weakness in the Death Star. If you've got tempo, if you've got dynamic wide receivers, and if you've got the ability to be able to hit those wide receivers. Western Kentucky had wide receivers running wide open, couldn't quite hit them. Byron Brown, same thing. They were playing with tempo. They got the opportunities, couldn't quite hit them. Wisconsin has none of the things necessary to be able to expose these weaknesses. Will Alabama struggle with Tennessee? I do think so. Could maybe even Brady Cook and Luther Burden dice up this secondary, which is starting a few too many untested players for my liking? Yes, but Wisconsin ain't the team. This is where, as Emory just mentioned, I think you do a lot of running Jalen Milroe. I think you do a lot of imposing your will at the line of scrimmage, because frankly, I don't think that this Wisconsin team is built along the trenches quite like what our mind wants to imagine as a Wisconsin team. Bama's better up front. Bama wins the game and covers.
But Chip, it was 14-13 Alabama going into the fourth quarter against South Florida last week. I just can't lay this many points after seeing what they did last week. So I'm going to play the under 51.5. I kind of see this similarly to Texas and Michigan last week. Where's that offense going to come from Wisconsin? Tyler Van Dyke has been very unimpressive against two lackluster teams thus far. Crimson Tide sleepwalked for three quarters last week. I'm not sure what to expect here, except a lower scoring game. Give me Alabama 30, Wisconsin 16. Now, we're not done with the top week 3 matchups. It's the other ranked versus ranked matchup this week. Is Boston College being disrespected by the odds makers? Find out next on the Early Edge. Back on the Early Edge, and I'm not sure anyone would have guessed that Boston College against Missouri would be a marquee game on the week 3 slate a month ago, but here we are. So this line's interesting. Missouri's the number 6th ranked team in the country. That's kind of also strange to say. Boston College 24. Missouri is giving 16.5 points. The total is 54. Mike, you have a first half play. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I laid the 9.5 in the first half, not messing with the full game here. Look, I think both of these teams are very good teams. I think Missouri is definitely deserved there. They've got a great quarterback wide receiver combo for sure. But I like the fact that this is a home game for them where I think they will start out well. And just being in a spot where you could have a 10-point lead, like a 20-10 kind of game, seems very realistic for me in the first half here. And then Boston College is just able to maintain and stick with them for the full game. So I'm more worried about them covering that 17 for the full game than I am for them to have a nice start out of the gate. I think they're personally going to have a ton of success offensively still. I just think Boston College is as well, but I like Missouri here in the first half, laying 9.5.
So Emory, your surprise team earlier in the show was Boston College. We know which way you're going here, right?
Definitely taking Boston College in the points. And listen, I love Missouri's pass game. Brady Cook was my number 5 quarterback coming into the college football season. I know Luther Burden is an NFL player out there as well, but we all know what stops a passing attack: pass rush. Guess what Boston College has? 2 excellent guys that can get to the quarterback. And on offense, they do a great job of playing ball control. They play smart, efficient football. Thomas Castellanos has taken steps forward this year in terms of protecting the football. And I love the point spread for Boston College. The reason being, they can now play the disrespect card. Hey, man, we knocked off an ACC team. Hey, man, we did this already this season, and they're still disrespecting us. Combine that with great pass rush, excellent secondary play, and a quarterback that isn't afraid of pressure of the moment, pressure from the defense, and can run the football. Give me all those points with Boston College.
All right, so Chip, you just heard that great explanation from Emory. You saw the awesome graphic that said Missouri has the best defense in the country. So you're playing aside on the total. It's clearly the under, right?
Best defense in the country when they had 10-minute quarters and a running clock against Buffalo. Boy, that's a great way to have a 0 in terms of your scoring defense. Come on now. You got to dig a little deeper than that. I think that in the matchup here, we actually have an opportunity to see a lot of points because this is where Missouri is going to be able to pick on the pass defense for Boston College in a way that Florida State certainly, and Duquesne as well, were not able to do. I think that you can have some matchups with not just Luther Burden, but Theo Weiss as well, where they're going to get those advantageous spots against some of those BC cornerbacks, hit those explosive plays down the field. And then on the other side, Missouri has not played anything close to an intimidating offense. And while the defense brings back a lot, they did lose their defensive coordinator in the offseason. And I think that Thomas Castellanos and the game plan that Boston College will have will be able to set them up to score some points as well. So when we've got a total, I could see this being something in the 40s to something in the 20s, thanks to the playmaking of Castellanos. I'm going over the total.
Chip, I don't care if they're playing in 8-minute quarters. These two teams in 4 games combined have 3 shutouts. Missouri combined in 2 games has given up 254 yards. Once again, I don't care if they're 5-minute quarters. This isn't NCAA football 25. This is real life. These guys are really good. Everything Emory said points to defense, ball control offense against excellent defense. Also, Boston College defense is no slouch. Listen, I think there's going to be some points in this game. Give me Missouri 30, Boston College 14. Now, the Battle of Oregon. This is a really interesting game. The Ducks were really hyped before the season. They've dropped from, number 3 to number 9, yet they're still laying 16.5 at Oregon State on Saturday. Oh, by the way, the last 2 times this game has been played in Corvallis, Oregon State has won the game outright. So, Chip, which way are you going?
Lay 'em. Listen, here's the deal. The Ducks are like a stuck zipper, okay? I understand where they're going. I understand what they're trying to do. They just keep getting things stuck in the way. And I think that over the last couple of games, and especially in the middle of that Boise State game, you started to see things get a little bit more dynamic with the run game. Dylan Gabriel, he is trying to force things a little bit. He's missing some throws, but there still remains confidence inside that Oregon program that once he settles in, he'll be able to really light it up and take full advantage of this Will Stein offense the same way that Bo Nix did. And ultimately, a lot of this comes down to Oregon State. I do not think that the Beavers have the body types to be able to go bang with the Ducks. This is why you spend so much in the transfer portal. This is why you do prioritize high school recruiting the way that Dan Lanning has, because while it has taken a little while for everything to be able to fall into line and for that zipper to become unstuck, they are still finding ways to win. This is a downgrade in competition from Boise State to Oregon State that is significant. I think Oregon wins this by 20 plus.
I am right there with you, Chip, and I'm glad you mentioned. I really do believe it's a downgrade in competition from that Boise State team. Certainly, Boise State is a team that can definitely produce yards and points. But when I look at Oregon here, you also mentioned the fact that they found ways to win games. That is simply what good teams do. They find a way. It's because they've got the athletes. They've got the explosive ability at any given moment. I personally think this is a big spot. Was it tough to get up for Idaho emotionally, mentally? Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit of the same for Boise State. But now when you get to this matchup here, it's not going to be tough to motivate anyone in that building for this one. I think they've heard the talk. This is an overreaction to me. Preseason, this line was 24.5. I believe it should be 20.5. I do think there should be an adjustment from preseason, but not all the way down here. 17 still an incredibly key number. We'll lay the 16.5 here with the Ducks.
All right, Emory. Battle lines being drawn on this show. You and I now are taking the Beavers. Why do you like Oregon State?
Because a lot of times it's about who knows what information and what lies beneath the surface. So as I'm watching the Oregon Idaho game, I'm sorry, as I'm watching Oregon struggle with Idaho, I just sat back and I was like, man, I wonder how Idaho would fare in this ball game if Giovanni McCoy was still at Idaho. You know what Giovanni McCoy transferred to? Oregon State. So they have a quarterback who has beaten a team from the FBS. They beat an FBS team last season when he was with Idaho. And you look at Oregon State, they now know they can go into this ball game with Oregon, who has struggled 2 weeks in a row. And this is a rivalry game. This is the Hatfields and McCoys. I expect Oregon State to bring their A game, their best game against the Ducks, because they know they're not the same Ducks that we saw last year. This Ducks team is a little bit more wobbly. They have a chance to really knock them out. So with a quarterback, McCoy, back there, who has played big-time games last year when he was at Idaho, and watching what his Vandals did against Oregon, and then subsequently last week beating Wyoming, I like his chances with a better football team at Oregon State to keep this one definitely under the number.
Emory, that's a great pick. It's my favorite play on the board this week. So remember, Oregon State doesn't really have a conference. They're in the Pac-2, I guess it's still called 12. And the reason they don't have a conference is because Oregon defected and kind of left them on their own, right? This is kind of a statement game for Oregon State, saying, you guys messed us up here. We're kind of homeless. We need to prove something to you. And also, as I said, Oregon State's won the last 2 meetings in Corvallis. And oh, by the way, the Ducks are having offensive line issues, only averaging 3 yards per carry this season. And oh, by the way, the Beavers are averaging 300 yards per game on the ground. We got Jam Griffin and Anthony Hankerson, 475 yards and 6 touchdowns combined. This one is going to be close. Oregon 27, Oregon State 24. All right, Chip, where do you rank right now, as it stands today? Where do you rank Oregon among your Big Ten power rankings?
They are like power ratings, power rankings, like that sort of approach. Is that what you're going for?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Ohio State, number 1 with a bullet. And then number 2, I think it's a Penn State, Oregon discussion, where Oregon has clearly been downgraded and maybe Penn State knocked a little bit. And then USC is right up there in a 4th, could be stuck up there. So it's like Ohio State here, gap. Penn State and Oregon with USC. So it kind of makes a little diamond with the Buckeyes. Probably, let's see, I got them 29.3 to 21.5, almost a full touchdown and a 2-point conversion ahead of the Ducks and the Nittany Lions.
I have it Ohio State, Ohio State, Penn State with offensive confidence. Then I have USC. Then I have Oregon. I have it falling like that because Penn State with confidence offensively, that's the team you want to bet on. Penn State offense with no confidence, that's the team we saw last year. I think we have Penn State with confidence this year offensively, so I ranked them a little bit higher.
Interesting. Penn State last week, really unimpressive to me, but still, James Franklin knows how to beat teams that he should beat. And then when he faces teams that he shouldn't beat, well, we know what happens there. All right, we have gone through the top games of week 3, but now it's time to see our best bets. Find out next. It is time for our best bets here on the Early Edge. Here's the recap screen. Emory and I went 2-0 last week. We'll try to keep it going. This is my favorite segment on this show. Emory, I mean, listen, you're on fire right now. You're picking upsets. You gave us Northern Illinois in this segment last week. We're going to have you give us your first pick of the week. Let's hear it.
It's probably one of my favorite ones of the weekend is Texas State money line against Arizona State. And the big reason why is because go back to the preseason when I talked about Texas State representing the group of 5 in the college football playoff as the Sun Best Conference champion. This team is built like a Power 4 team along both sides of the line of scrimmage. Jordan McLeod, veteran, experienced Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year at James Madison, steering the controls here, knows how to play in big game moments. He has done that all throughout last season. He's doing it this year, and they just are flat out the better team on both sides of the ball than Arizona State. That's why the point spread is them being a 1.5-point underdog. Screw the points. Just give me them straight up on the money line. In San Marcos, I like Texas State.
Emory, I knew I liked you. Great pick. All right, Chip. This is a really fun one that you're picking. Indiana plays in the Rose Bowl, which is kind of seems like an oxymoron, right? But it's for real, and you like them this week at UCLA.
Oh, yeah, man. Get your heaters and your darts ready because I'm going with Coach Sig in prime time. So Kurt Signetti, when he showed up to Indiana, he's coming off that 11-1 regular season with James Madison, brought with him like almost the whole daggum coaching staff. A lot of the players, except for Jordan McLeod, which went to, Texas State, as Emory Hunt knows. And what he was able to bring is a culture and a core that was going to allow Indiana to hit the ground running. And look, Indiana doesn't have that big win that you can point to say that they are ready to go hang with Ohio State and Michigan, like Kurt Signetti said when he was on the microphone in the basketball game right after he got hired. But what they have done is they have been ridiculously efficient. They have been ridiculously effective. And their quarterback, Curtis Rourke, who they got from Ohio, after a little bit of health issues near the end of his time with the Bobcats, it looks like he is off and rolling. So I think that Kurt Signetti and the Hoosiers have got a great opportunity to start Big Ten play with a touchdown win or more. I like the Hoosiers to be able to cover the 3 in the Rose Bowl.
All right. Makes plenty of sense. M squared. I don't even know how to tee you up for this pick. Just humor all of us, I guess. Go for it.
We needed to talk a little more Kansas State, Arizona here. I'm going to go Kansas State first quarter. Lay the 1.5 here. I like Kansas State to win the first quarter. Look, this is where I think the home field advantage shows up. It shows up early. It shows up with scripted drives out of the locker room for Kansas State in primetime here. We've seen Arizona. The knock that I've had on them really is they've started incredibly slow each of their first 2 games here. I think that could continue in this particular environment. So I like Kansas State for the full game, but I really like them here in the first quarter because I do think that they're going to have some success right out of the locker room with a scripted drive. Look for a good result from Avery Johnson. Touchdown in the first quarter. Win the first quarter here, Kansas State.
Unfortunately, I can't argue with that. I'm going to go TCU on the money line at plus 110 against UCF at home. So this is kind of a must win for the Horned Frogs as they'll be underdogs in 3 of their next 4 on the road. Their defense looks halfway decent. I mean, they held some team named Long Island. I mean, I know where it is, but I didn't know they had a team to not very many total yards. So that's a good thing. Under 200 total yards. UCF went 1-4 in Big 12 road games last year. The only team they beat was Cincinnati, who, by the way, was in the midst of a 1-9 stretch. I kind of look at these as 2 evenly matched teams and will most always take the home team in that scenario. So give me TCU 34, UCF 27. All right, Emory, we're going to roll it back to you. Now you're going with, this is a really interesting one. We saw Mississippi State last week. I gave them as my upset pick against ASU. Didn't work out so well. They're back home facing a team from the MAC. Which way do you lean?
Always lean toward the MAC. When you think about what Northern Illinois did, it gave confidence to the other 3 really good teams this year in the MAC. Bowling Green, Miami of Ohio. Hopefully they could bounce back after the Northwestern loss. And also Toledo, who is right there. Toledo does a great job of playing physical football, 11-man defense. They all run to the football, and they can run the ball as well. I think they're catching Mississippi State at a great spot. Plus 16.5. No way. Take the Rockets to keep this one very close, whether you can find it at 12.5 or plus 16. Definitely take them to be in a 1-score game with Mississippi State.
All right, Chip, a rivalry that we haven't talked about, usually played at the end of November, but now the teams are in different conferences. Similar to Oregon State, the Apple Cup. So Washington State is conferenceless. Sorry, the Pac-2 doesn't count. And Washington's now in the Big Ten. You like one team's total points in this game. Why?
Yeah, when you're talking about the chip on the shoulder factor that we've got going into these rivalry games, I understand it's probably there for both of them, but I actually think that Washington State has the dudes to be able to have an impact. Washington State has the offense in particular to be able to go out there and maybe threaten for an upset win, and Washington State, for my money, has been more impressive than Oregon State. A lot of it comes down to the passing game. Sophomore quarterback John Mateer has been absolutely on fire, 6 touchdowns to 1 interception, 13 yards per attempt. And he's got a couple of wide receivers in Kyle Williams and Chris Hudson. Williams was at UNLV a couple years ago. Hudson comes over from Oregon this past spring, and they have both been very, very reliable targets for this passing game. I think that what Washington State has is the kind of offense that can go into this rivalry game and put up points. We've got a team total for the Cougars that is in a little bit of that dead zone, like 24.5, 25.5. Basically anything under 27 is going to be green light go for me. They're going to force Will Rogers and the Washington pass attack to trade paint, and I think that leads to a higher scoring game. But I have more confidence, honestly, in the Cougs being able to put up points than the Huskies. So Washington State, maybe a live dog, but the best bet, Washington State team total over.
Would you sprinkle the money line though, Chip?
Yes. I think Washington State can win the ball game. Husky Stadium is sneaky big home field advantage. Jed Fish is a good coach, but that team has been gutted from the group that was playing for the national championship a year ago.
Yeah, well, they have multiple players from Jed's old team that have filled some of the gaps. Go Cougars. All right, so M Squared, you're really sharp with team totals and quarter lines and halftime lines, as we've always seen. Now you have one that kind of aligns with a pick that I made earlier in the show. What is it?
Yeah, it's going to be the Alabama-Wisconsin game. We're going to go Wisconsin team total under 16.5 here. I think Alabama's going to dominate this football game really on both sides of the ball, but I think this game's going to move incredibly quick. If you're Bama, yes, you want to put up nice performance. Milroe wants to make a case for the Heisman for sure, but you want to get in and get out without any injuries. You want to get to that bye week, go get prepared for Georgia here. I think this is a game that moves relatively slow, and I think Wisconsin just has a quarterback problem. I don't think they're going to have any success whatsoever against this Alabama defense. So I think that 17, while it seems like a number that a lot of teams can achieve, is a big ask in this particular matchup here, because I think Bama is going to dominate time of possession. And I think that they're, again, Wisconsin, just a massive quarterback problem here, not going to be able to throw the football on this Alabama defense. We'll go under 16.5 total points for Wisconsin.
So M Squared, you somewhat mentioned Georgia. Now Georgia's playing Kentucky in an SEC, I don't want to call it a thriller. The over-under is 45.5. Now historically, with the exception of last year, these are really low scoring games. In the last 7 meetings, Kentucky is averaging only 9 points a game against Georgia. The last 2 meetings in Lexington have been 14-3 and 16-6. Now, Georgia's 1-9-1 against the spread in their last 11 games against unranked opponents. And Kentucky is 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 against Georgia. So we know Kentucky isn't scoring more than 2 touchdowns, and Georgia isn't covering the 24.5. Give me Georgia 27, Kentucky 10. Just go with that logic. Low scoring game under 45.5. Love that bet. All right, which week 3 favorites are on upset alert? Who is this week's Northern Illinois? We'll find out who coming up next. Welcome back to the Early Edge. Which week 3 favorites should you fade? It is time for our dog of the week. Emory 2-0 after hitting Sam Houston State and Army. He is up more than 4 units in this segment through 2 weeks. So Emory, obviously you get to start us off with a big one here. Let's hear it.
I love UNLV, not Tech 9, Lil Ya and Yella. Shout out to my guys in New Orleans, but the ones in Vegas, not Stacey Augmon, not Larry Johnson, not those guys. Randall Cunningham's running Rebels. I like them because they have the offense with the go-go offense. They also have the defense that got better late last season, and now that defense is starting to get after the quarterback, and on the back end, that secondary is outstanding. Kansas is a little bit too inconsistent with the football, in my opinion, so I do like UNLV with their level of consistency and continuity, and the fact that they don't beat themselves to win straight up over the Jayhawks.
I like that call with Kansas losing 2 in a row. I'm going to look at the Notre Dame game, though, with Purdue. Can Notre Dame lose 2 in a row? There's no way, right? I don't know about this one. Purdue coming off the bye week. They've been preparing for Notre Dame for quite some time now, and they've got a legitimate quarterback. I still believe in Hudson Card personally. The transfer from Texas, he was a highly touted quarterback in high school from Lake Travis High School. I personally think that they've got the skill set to contend a little bit in this game. But the real concern for Notre Dame is they were literally pushed around by Northern Illinois. They couldn't stop the run at all, even in extremely obvious survive and kill clock. I think the Ryan Walters era could use this massive win for Purdue, and I personally think these two teams are a lot closer because I don't think Riley Leonard is healthy. I don't think he's healthy enough to be effective right now. You've talked about that shoulder injury on the non-throwing side, but it impacts his ability to be mobile and to make plays, to extend plays. And if things start slow at all in this one, you have to wonder where the locker room is. We saw it with Florida State. There's no way Florida State's losing 2 in a row, right? I think it could happen here with Notre Dame. So I will be on Purdue here plus 320.
Hey, Mike, there's no way Notre Dame could lose 2 in a row. Oh, wait, it happened 2 years ago at the beginning of the 2022 season. It ain't that unfamiliar for this Fighting Irish team. But my dog is going to be South Carolina because this is potentially one of the biggest games of the Shane Beamer era because you've got an LSU team coming in that we know is undisciplined, that we know is a little bit inconsistent. And whether Brian Kelly is getting so angry at whatever's going on the sidelines, I think that South Carolina and that defensive line led by Dylan Stewart, I think they are ripe to be able to make this a little bit low scoring and a little bit uncomfortable. We do need our Rec Specs king, not Horace Grant, but Lenoris Sellers to be able to go out there, make some plays with his legs. But this LSU defense, especially on the back end, is susceptible to giving up those big plays. So let's go Gamecocks to get our Saturday started with a little upset.
All right, I'm going to hit my upset pick this week. I feel great about it. Memphis plus 200 against Florida State. Now, remember, Memphis is arguably the top group of 5 contender. They have a potent offense led by Seth Hennigan, threw for nearly 3,900 yards and 32 touchdowns last year. And let's be honest, do you really believe in Florida State right now? What have you seen from the Seminoles outside of their name being Florida State that would have you betting them minus 6.5, much less to win the game outright? Memphis pulls the upset here, and the Seminoles fans go into even more of a meltdown. All right, let's recap it here. Chip is on South Carolina plus 225 against LSU. Emory going for Kansas, losing 2 in a row with UNLV plus 220. Mike on Purdue plus 320 against Notre Dame. And I'm going Memphis plus 200 against Florida State. All right, let us look at the shortest odds to win the college football playoff. Mike, what is your favorite bet on the board? If I gave you $100, which I might this week, where are you betting it?
You're definitely giving me $100 because you're not winning that Arizona bet. I'll take Texas right now. I actually really like what I've seen from the Texas Longhorns. I know we're not high on Michigan overall. Still always impressive early kick to go in that building and just absolutely dominate. I love what I've seen from the Longhorns.
Yeah, the Georgia Bulldogs, I know they're the team at the top of the board. They were my pick to win in the preseason. They have done absolutely nothing to dissuade me from the idea that you expanded the playoff just to let the deepest and most talented teams win more. So give me Georgia.
And shout out to Greg Anthony at UNLV as well, to part of the basketball team. But I will go with Texas. I do like them. Preseason, I like them now even more so, seeing them in the year and what they've done.
How about those Ohio State Buckeyes guys? Plus 375. They have arguably one of the best receivers in the country, and he's only played 2 games in Jeremiah Smith. They look so complete. They look like a perfect team. The defense looks great. I mean, I know they haven't played anybody, but let's be honest here. I mean, Emory, am I onto something here with the Buckeyes? Best team in the country thus far that I've seen.
I'm losing my feed in my ear. I can't hear you right now. I'm losing the feed in my ear. Texas all the way.
Chip, I'm telling you, Buckeyes, don't sleep on them. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this, again, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, we're talking about the deepest and most talented teams. There ain't a long shot. Unless you want to cash out, you ain't cashing a ticket. It's just a cash out unless you're picking one of those 3 teams.
I'm cashing that Ohio State ticket in late January. I'm just going to tell you that. Guys, what an awesome show we've had. I learned a lot from you, as I hope all of the audience did. Great show as always. For Chip Patterson, Emory Hunt, and Mike McClure, I am Eric Cohen. Thanks for watching the Early Edge College Football Pick Show. And as I always like to say, let's hit it big. Good luck.